Okay, well, welcome everybody. My name's Karen Miles. Thank you so much for joining our session today. We're interested in finding out where you're from, what your job is, and why you're interested in this session about guided pathways. A little bit about my background. I was formerly the K14 Career Pathways Technical Assistance Provider for the South Central Coast region. And a couple of years ago, I was asked to carry out some research by them on basically better linkages between the high schools and the community colleges. And so I started doing some research, and I was working primarily by meeting with the team members from Guided Pathways in the colleges to find out a little bit more from them about what was going on with guided pathways at that point. And everybody back then were kind of in the middle of figuring out what were their meta majors, and hadn't really got to the point where they were thinking about the students entering the pathway and how to get them to enter into the correct pathway area. So the research that I did was kind of a little bit ahead of time, thinking about how can we get our incoming high school students into our correct meta majors or our correct guided pathways. And one of the things that I discovered with the research was a great quote, which was, "No one is held accountable for issues related to student transitions from high school to college." And I thought that that was a really kind of profound quote, because if you think about it, if you work in the community colleges, we basically say, well, we'll help anybody that shows up here on our doorstep. And the high schools are focusing on the students completing high school and graduating with their high school diploma. But what I learned doing this research was that we have a lot of students who have great intentions about entering the community colleges after high school who never actually make it. And some of the rationale for that was some of the other things that I uncovered in this research. So I took all of the research and I turned it into a toolkit. And at the end of this session, we'll be sharing that toolkit with you. I actually developed a couple of different toolkits. One was from the community college perspective, one was from the K-12 perspective. And so if you're interested, you can just email me and I'll be happy to forward those on to you. So thank you for those folks that are adding in some information into the chat about where you're from and what you do. I'd like everybody right now to just type into the chat one word that describes your current high school transition into your community college. What word do you think your incoming high school students would use to basically to capture that experience at the moment? If you were a high school student entering your community college, what would be one word that you would think? Christina, I love that. Christina's got a lot of exclamation points and like, what the heck symbols. Okay, we've got confusing, zigzag, they're not aware. We've got they need help, it's overwhelming, it's intimidating. Exactly. So we've got all these different sentiments. So we know that we need to be helping our incoming community college students better than we are at the moment. So I'm going to be sharing with you a kind of a presentation about an overview of what's in the toolkit and some of the main things that I found out with the research. And we're going to be taking a few breaks to do some breakout sessions to kind of brainstorm some answers to some of these problems that you've just highlighted so well in talking about your student experiences. So let's get going. And the first slide that we're going to talk about is just the methodology. So when I was developing this toolkit for the South Central Coast Regional Consortium, I did 28 interviews with people from our 8 different colleges And they were a mixture of deans, faculty, counselors, guided pathway team members. And then they were asking other people to join in these conversations, people from enrollment services, institutional researchers, etc. So, as these conversations got going, I think one of the very important outcomes was that people realized there are a lot of people that are currently connecting with K-12 and it's not organized, it's not really always in an organized way. So the research that I did was basically to investigate what are some best practices from those guided pathways colleges that were early implementing, either in California or in other states. And then I had 23 different research documents that I went through to pull all of the information into the report. And I think, my conclusion after I finished doing this research was that we need to connect with our K-12 partners in ways we have not necessarily done so before. So here's a visual that's kind of like our typical onboarding process at the moment in the California community colleges. And you can see it's very problematic. Few students know what they want to study or why. Critical supports are missing. And although we have an opportunity to build a bridge into the community colleges, we're not always doing that in the best way that would make sense to students. And so, we've got a lot of people that are getting lost in the process. And there's a couple of statistics here that I uncovered that were fairly scary, which was that over half of students that apply to a community college never actually start. And 2/3 of students who come into our colleges are guessing their major. So obviously this is not optimal, and this is where we're at the moment. What we would like to see is where most of our high school students are transitioning successfully into the colleges. And that would mean that we would have a lot of activities going on in K-12 that we don't have at the moment. Students would be doing things like career exploration. Undecided seniors would be taking a college career exploration class with information about meta majors or guided pathways embedded in them. We'd be looking at doing more summer bridge activities, etc. And so I'll be going over these a little bit more as we move forward. So most of our colleges have now finished with the first area of the guided pathways, which was clarifying the path. And so entering the path is what's happening next. And so a lot of colleges have been focused on what's going on with their current students, but we really do need to figure out how can we connect with K-12 better, because it's definitely not what we would call a seamless system at the moment. And so I've done some research, and you're all very welcome to jump on the CalPAS Plus website and do the research for your own colleges. But I found out that across our region, across all of our community colleges, we were losing over half of the students who were applying, who never actually started. They never actually enrolled in any community college classes. And this is across the whole state. This isn't just our region. This was just to give you an idea. We lose nearly 130,000 students each year in between our high school and our community college, and that was for the 8 colleges in our region. So do take a moment, if you have a chance, to get on CalPAS Plus and to see what it looks like for your colleges and your region. So one of the things that we need to be figuring is, how can we get students into the right meta major for them? Because just having sorted out meta majors isn't going to mean that they end up in the correct one. They could move into one meta major and then into a completely different meta major if they haven't really done enough thinking about why do they want to be in that particular meta major. And one of the things that we know is that career decision making is developmental. And so this is something that should be happening across the whole of high school. If we have our incoming students to the community colleges that don't really know what they want to be doing and why, we need to take time to actually let them think about that, and to be doing things like career exploration, to be doing career assessments, to be doing career research, just basically asking them to pick a meta major on a CCC apply form is not really very helpful for them. And so we need to improve understanding with our high school students about which programs we offer and about what that means in terms of employment and might mean in terms of further education. This is where that statistic came from about the 2/3 of students choosing a major are guessing. And we're basically many times asking our students to choose a major without really providing any adequate guidance. We're also, we lose a lot of students, and I think that one of the reasons that we lose a lot of students is that they don't know their why. They don't really know why they're in the community college, and they don't really know what it is they're doing there. They kind of know that they should go to college, but they haven't really figured out how what they're doing in college connects to their future career. And so one of the interesting things about the research that is highlighted here is that if we ask them to choose a major, it creates anxiety and cognitive dissonance for them if they haven't had time to do that thinking that I was just talking about. And so really what they need is personal assistance, and that leads to better enrollment outcomes. We need to be helping them choose the appropriate program. And we know that in our colleges, we don't really have the capacity to help all of our undecided students carry out both career exploration and decision making, which is why we need to be working with our high schools to help them do this with their students before they ever get to the college campuses. Somebody from the Community College Research Center, Melissa Karp, pointed out that it's not realistic to expect most students to identify a major immediately upon matriculation. And then one of the counselors in this research pointed out that pre-nursing at their college, at Cuesta College, is their #1 major. And they were able to call out that that is not really an informed decision, that the students don't know about other careers that are available in the health field. They don't really understand what it takes to get into the nursing program and the numbers of students trying to get into the nursing program. So really students need more time to explore career options, salaries, jobs available, etc. And that is a multi-phase process. So we're going to put you into breakout sessions now, and we're going to ask you to spend 8 minutes thinking about this question. How can we help undecided students enter the correct path? So you heard me, talk about a few of the issues that are happening, but let's talk about some of the ways that we could actually fix this.
That's a fail.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. So we would like to hear from you about what your discussions were in your room. So if everybody could just choose somebody to report out. And I'll just ask you to mute if you're not the person reporting out at the moment. So in room 1, we had Becky, Christina, and Leslie. So who would like to report out from that room?
I'm going to nominate Christina because she was taking great notes.
All right.
Okay, Christina, you were voluntold. Off you go.
I was voluntold for sure. So the overarching theme was that we need to look at awareness before we can explore what's there. A lot of our youth they're not even aware of careers or what's out there. I mean, most of them think they know about nurses and doctors and firemen, right? And that's about as far as they go. Mm-hmm. So getting that awareness of what it is, and then starting to introduce those options as stated. Going back into the middle schools or even more into K-12 and bringing CTE into the programs from K-12 all the way up to high school rather than just high school or middle school. And bringing industry in early on and participating with students to help explore the ideas and develop those passions, and then help them take the pathway to the next step into the middle school and the high school and beyond as they're exposed to that. And that gives the industry a place to have input on what's important to them to bring and help develop the workforce as well.
Great, thank you. By the way, can everybody see the PowerPoint screen that says choose someone to report out? Can you all see that still? Okay, great. All right, our second room, we had Bruce, Irene, and somebody on an iPhone. So it just says iPhone 2. So could somebody from that group report out on your discussion, please?
That's iPhone 2 is going to report out.
Okay, iPhone 2, you've got the floor. You're muted at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, and I can't see myself because I'm on a phone. We unfortunately, I think we took too much time to get to know each other, and so as soon as we started getting to the discussion, we got a warning. We had like a minute left, but I am fairly new to guided pathways and reaching out to high schoolers, and so this was really more of a learning opportunity for me to learn about sorry, I just got distracted, about how to reach out and how to help high schoolers figure out, what their career, would be going into community colleges. But I had talked about Pathway U, a career exploration tool that is available to our high school partners that I use in our outreach presentations. And then one of my colleagues had also mentioned someone else on this call, and I don't know if she's still on here. She's with the Marin County Community Colleges, and she was also offering some wonderful expertise. So if she's still on, I would love that input. But unfortunately, we didn't get too much into our conversation.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. We're trying to keep the breakouts pretty focused. So yes, I should have warned you about that. 8 minutes isn't a long time when you're doing introductions.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. So room 4, we had Annette, Carly, Jean, Jeanette, and Rosie. Would somebody like to report out from that room?
I'm happy to report out if that's okay with everybody. I think one of the biggest things that we talked about were our own personal experiences coming from high school and what that felt like. And we were talking about how in our hometowns, at least, community college was almost seen as a last resort, that would be like you were seen as a failure if you ended up staying there and going to that community college. And so we talked a lot about how to break down that stigma, and then also how to, and again, we haven't been in high school for a while, but we also were talking about just how our own experiences, we weren't exposed to CTE being even an option in high school. It was like everybody's going to the 4-year, that's the option, that's the route that you take. And if you don't take that, again, there's a little bit of a stigma around you being like almost a failure to like go to, it might, like for yourself anyways, feel like a failure to stay in your hometown, go to the community college, or go into something more technical. So we kind of reflected on our own personal experiences around being undecided students right in that transitional moment.
Great, thank you. And there's a good comment from Annette in the chat about they recognized at their college that CTE fits into all of their meta majors. And when we show would-be transfer students how short-term certificates can help them build their resumes and make them employable as they work towards 4-year degrees and higher, helps with their finances significantly. So thank you for all those comments. Okay, we're going to have another couple of breakout sessions like that further along, but let's keep going with the content of the slides. So when you get a chance to download the toolkit at the end of this session, you'll see there are 3 areas that kind of touch on this. One is college provided career exploration classes, because that way you can embed your meta majors or your guided pathways. One is the benefits of doing career exploration in high school. And then there's another section that is on labor market information. And so I think all of those will be relevant to the question that we just were looking at. Okay. So there's a great quote here from one of the counselors at Ventura College. Critical career conversations need to start in 6th and 7th grade. with middle school teachers and counselors, and then be continued in the home. And so, you know, this really shows the importance of the fact that career counseling is developmental, and that's how we should be thinking about it, that we need to start with our students very early on. I did some other research for another project, and I found that 45% of elementary school students had already decided that they weren't going to be able to get the career that they most wanted in life, which I think is just so sad, you know, that our students are already abandoning their dreams so early on. And so we definitely need to be doing some interventions with them earlier on in their K-12 career. So in terms of college provided career and meta major information, it would be great if we were like the go-to place for that information. And I know that many colleges are moving towards using things like Program Mapper that pull in labor market information around their meta majors. And I think that's you know, a great thing that we can refer our K-12 students to. But on the other hand, we've got to balance that with the fact that students can get pretty confused by the information that we're providing them. And so that may not be sufficient to actually improve their planning behavior. And so we need to think about how can we make sure they've understood the information and that it has helped them in moving forward in their career decision making. Davis Jenkins pointed out that the opportunity to explore career fields while in high school at no cost to students and their families is invaluable. So the idea of us providing career classes for all of our undecided students when they're in the community college isn't really as helpful for them as them actually having access to those kinds of classes when they are in high school and embedded in their high school experience. And we need to be getting our students to kind of be thinking about going from having a general direction in 9th grade of high school to having a destination by the time that they get to 12th grade. And so we would really, you know, one of the things I would really emphasize is that if you can offer career exploration classes through either dual enrollment or high school articulation to students in high schools, that's going to be beneficial for them and not losing time in the colleges by not knowing what they're doing there. And again, a counselor at Ventura College noted that they had been having those kinds of classes offered to students in their local high schools. And she was talking about the fact that she'd seen a culture change and that the college was able to start doing thematic counseling orientations, and that it was much easier to work with students in a meta major or in a guided pathways area if they had already kind of had an idea about what it is they wanted to do, even if they hadn't fixed on an actual program of study or an actual major. So there are quite a lot of colleges that offer career exploration classes in high schools. Some of the colleges offer either a 0.5 or a 1 unit class for high school students to revise their career plans and to actually complete their student ed plans. A lot of colleges are actually doing both dual enrollment of career exploration and student success classes in their high schools, which I think are both great practices. And then another college was actually conducting exit interviews with the seniors with the high school counselors, so they could figure out which students wanted to go to the community college. And then they basically built in a career college planning class during the student's senior year if they wanted to go to the college, but they weren't sure what they wanted to study, which again, I think is great. So one of the themes of the toolkit is that we have a lot of students that are already receiving early college credit through either dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment, or high school articulation. And we're not really necessarily connecting with those students as being already our students while they're in high school. Quite often they take a class for college credit, but they still don't feel very connected with the community college. And one of our local colleges, Santa Barbara City, was actually registering all of their 8th grade students with the city college, and it was built into their high school orientation and class selection. And that consent form just basically stayed on file for the whole time that they were taking dual enrollment classes, or they were taking high school articulated classes during high school. And so one of the things that we're going to think about is, you know, that sense of belonging, and how do we develop that sense of belonging for those of our students that are already getting our early college credit while they're in high school. So we're going to go into another breakout session now. So don't forget, don't take too long on your introductions, because we're only going to be giving you 8 minutes to do this. But take some time to think about how can you better connect with your high school students who are already taking these classes and create a sense of belonging. Okay, so we're going to put you back into breakout rooms now, and we'll give you a warning in 7 minutes. Thank you. So room 1, we have Becky, Irene, and Jeanette. Who would like?
I'll go ahead and go. This is Becky with Shasta College. We also had Catherine Horton with us as well, who had something, some great activities to share. So we just kind of talked about some of the activities that our colleges have shared that we've seen good engagement with. Irene talked about some, like in the more in the health sector, EMT, like really getting that engagement with high school students, inviting them to come out to the college for simulation days and for getting some direct engagement with instructors and with the other college students, that just really forms those strong bonds and, you know, kind of helps lay, I think, the landscape for those high school students to envision themselves in those roles. I shared from Shasta College, we do similar things in some of our CTE programs as well, where we invite high school students that are kind of already in those certain pathways at the high school level to come into the college and spend a special day, a special event of some sort, connecting with instructors and connecting with other college students and kind of hearing those stories and testimonials. And then as well as some discussion around doing very similar things. Catherine was sharing, they have some virtual reality that they're doing with their auto kind of programs where they're taking that out into high school so that, you know, in this pandemic and this kind of everybody has all this great momentum and things happening. And then it's like, how do you pivot? And so they've come up with some really innovative, creative ways to do that as well. So it was good just to kind of hear these different ideas and a lot of overlap in them. But when you hear them applied in different sectors, sometimes it sparks new inspiration for the particular sectors that each of us individually are working in.
Great, thank you. Yeah, one of the things I've seen during these strange COVID times is culinary arts classrooms with multiple cameras so that students can see everything that's going on. It's kind of like turning into one of those Iron Chef cooking shows or something. Great. Okay, thank you. So in room 2, I think we had Andrew, Annette, Carly, Diane, and Gary. Would somebody like to report out from room 2, please?
Hello, Gary Potter here from the Central Valley Motherlode region. Some things that we talked about were engaging with students prior to high school, 5th, 6th, 7th grade for career awareness for the middle schools. And also there seems to be an advantage to those middle college institutions, so the high school programs that are on community colleges campuses. A little bit easier to engage with those schools because a lot of those schools are dual enrolling already or have that partnership because they are on campus.
Great, thank you. Room 3, we had Christina, Jean, Rosie, and I'm sorry, our attendee on her iPhone. I don't know your name. iPhone 2 person. Would somebody from that group like to report?
I volunteer, Rosie.
Is that getting back? Okay. Rosie, are you able to report out for your group? I don't know, Christina, I think it might be you again. Would you mind?
Okay. So we talked about getting together with ROPs and counselors and other services to kind of weekly have meetings to see where everyone are, where all the stakeholders are in providing services for our high school students. We talked about creating cohorts of students and harnessing their tendency to use social media and the digital tools to create their communities, and encouraging that with guidance from the adults, from the faculty that are oriented to the different industry areas is another way, kind of gamifying it, getting them interested in exploring, because the students are very good at communicating with each other and helping each other learn more.
Mm-hmm.
There's Spotlight Night with career education programs and meeting students who have made it, sort of a success stories coming in and making and building the relationships and kind of doing a mentorship style relationship, and then bringing in faculty from the meta majors into regular meetings to meet with students to kind of build the relationship so that when they do go to university or to community college, they have a contact, and bringing back the in-person orientations for our students and giving them that one-on-one and small group interaction to build that comfort in the college environment and helping them move forward with that. Those are kind of the areas that we spoke on.
Thank you so much. And then our final room, I think we have Bruce and Leslie.
Yes, I've been assigned by Leslie to take care of this.
Go for it, Bruce.
So Leslie had mentioned articulation, and so that brought our discussion around of what we're doing at Saddleback College. Leslie's from the San Diego area, but under our CCAP agreement, we're building pathways during the Bell schedule for the students, and we just started with an automotive technology pathway. But what we've done is, because a lot of high school students take articulation classes, we've taken the articulation, the Auto 100 class would be the first one in the pathway. Before the student even knows they're in the pathway, they're taking this auto class because they just want to take auto classes at high school. Now we're bringing in the college instructor to continue that pathway into the Auto 101, and now they're taking college classes and in the pathway going through, and so we're going to see how that model goes and use more articulated classes to get those students really progressing into college. We also, as part of that pathway, one of the first classes we have is a Counseling 61 class, and of how to study, how to study while you're in college and things that way. So, we'll see how it goes.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so as again I mentioned earlier, when you download the toolkit, you'll see some content around this topic. There are some great suggestions from Completion by Design. There is a section on dual enrollment and early college credit students, and also a section on early college credit offerings. And we're going to talk about that a little bit now. So one of the things that we know is still kind of happening in the community colleges is that we have a la carte opportunities for both dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment, and high school articulation for our K-12 students. And I love that Bakersfield Community College calls this random acts of dual enrollment. So, I think that with the advent of meta majors, we've got an opportunity here to offer one particular type of introductory course for each meta major area and offer those at the different school sites so that the students can really get a better understanding of what types of careers would be connected with those meta major areas, and understand a little bit more about that kind of whole pathway area. And I'm already beginning to hear about some colleges doing that, and actually counselors at one college that are working on those kind of introductory courses to be offered in the high schools. And then Santa Barbara City College, highlighted in this study, was developing a list for the department chairs of possible dual enrollment classes that meet high school graduation requirements. So for example, American history. So whereas they've been very focused on CTE for dual enrollment previously, they're now looking at different types of opportunities. And there are just so many different kinds of early college credit we could be offering. It can be around career technical education. It could be for an academy. It could be to meet A through G requirements for a high school. I'm hearing about many colleges are offering IGETC dual enrollment pathways where students are knocking out some of their gen ed in high school. We talked about the importance of embedding those student success and career exploration classes. Some colleges focus on offering the type of English and math that will help students get up to speed. So what we used to call our remedial math classes in high school, so that students entering the college can go straight into college level math without needing any of the additional supports. Even though that now we have AB 540, some colleges are still helping their students get their English and math up to speed. And then, we might be offering classes also for specific populations, like students with disabilities, for example, as well as classes for enrichment. And so, we've got a lot of different opportunities to be offering in our high schools. And it's a good idea to actually kind of start developing a portfolio of classes to offer to our high schools rather than doing this more random early college credit. So I love this quote from a dean at Cuesta College, that it's a missed opportunity not to have the students visiting the college campus as often as possible. And some of you referenced in your breakout sessions that you wanted to start doing some work with your students in your middle schools. And this is an example from Allen Hancock College, where they have different activities for different grades of students in K-12. So as young as 4th grade students, and then following them through middle school and through high school as well. So they have not just one opportunity to connect with the college, but multiple opportunities during their time in K-12, so that they begin to really think about their local community college as being their next step. And I completely agree with this as well. If the students have a positive experience on campus while they're still high school students, they're going to have a more positive experience when they transfer over and become college students. So something else that I'm beginning to see a lot more of, and this was mentioned in a lot of the literature about the early implementing guided pathways colleges in other states, was hybrid counseling. And so we did see a couple of local models in some of our local colleges in the South Central Coast region, where college counselors or college advisors were based at the high school for part of the time in order to help students do academic planning. But I love this idea from, this is from a community college in another state, where to keep dual enrollment students on plan, the college had developed an advising tool that they shared with the local high school counselors, so that both sets of counselors had access to see how students were progressing in those dual enrollment classes. And so they didn't just have one set of counselors helping them, they had both sets, which I thought was very exciting. And then another model from Antelope Valley College, they have a bridge program where they basically hired and trained 16 counselors from their local high schools to become adjunct counselors for the college. And they felt that that had really helped them with disseminating information to the high schools, and that had really changed the whole relationship between the college and the high schools and getting information out there. So when we're thinking about college and career knowledge, we know that we have some equity issues with our students, and the research really backed that up. So one of these studies showed that there was a very big difference in college knowledge and understanding how to be successful in college in students within the same school by different academic tracks, and then also between different schools based on their socioeconomic status. And so, of course, it's lower income students who were struggling the most and not necessarily having the social capital to be able to navigate the colleges successfully. And they were backing this up with some information that only 61% of Californian parents reported having received any college information from their high schools. So that's 2/3 nearly of our parents not having had any information about what's supposed to be happening after high school. And then another study noted that there's a big gap between Black and white students, and another gap between Hispanic and white students if we were just focusing on our part-time populations, because it's our part-time students who are struggling to be able to carry on in college while they're trying to also support themselves and their families. And they're disproportionately underrepresented students are those that have this equity challenge. And academic plans, as we're developing them, those 2-year templates that the colleges have been developing under guided pathways, are really addressing students that are attending full-time. And so part-time students don't always understand the course sequencing that they need to be following in order to be successful. So high school teachers turn out to be a pivotal point for us in disseminating college information about our meta majors. And I did not know that this was the case, but it said after parents, high school teachers are the greatest influence on students as to whether they attend college or not, which kind of makes sense because they have more face time with the students than the high school counselors do. But then this was worrying. It reported that the teachers were getting their information about colleges either from their alumni, their graduates who are now in college, or from student teachers, or what they were reading in the newspapers, or they were reflecting back on their own college experiences, or they were getting information from their own children's experiences. They were not accessing information directly from the institutions. And so this really underlines that we need to be networking with high school teachers, not just high school counselors, because they are critical to getting this information out there to students. And parents are another group who are really missing from our community college campuses. And, you know, this was highlighted by this dean at Oxnard College, who really said that bringing in the families was critical. Santa Barbara City College had developed a resource guide for parents that they were able to share in English and Spanish with the parents of the incoming high school students. And then Moorpark College had started discussing different ways that they could do outreach to high school parents, such as through PTAs or in parent newsletters. And, you know, one of the things that we know is that parents also need career and college knowledge, and they need to know about grit and growth mindset. And so I'm always happy when I see community colleges that offer a parent college. Some of them do this at the same time that they're doing the orientation for the incoming freshman students. They have a parent orientation happening at the same time. But I really feel that this connection with parents is very important for parents to be able to adequately support their students while they're going through college. And then another counselor mentioned that we really need to be teaming up with the high school counselors to really talk about the parent college literacy piece. Financially is a big area, because the expectation of many parents is that students would be working while they're attending college and helping to support the family. And so helping to get the word out on what kinds of financial aid are available out there for students while they're in college to make sure that they're really accessing that. And then the students themselves, there was some interesting research about how if we have the students apply as a cohort for both to the college and for financial aid, it really helps those students that are indecisive, lacking in confidence or lacking in motivation, or were otherwise disadvantaged, or for those who don't have parents that are really urging them to get on with the application process. And so this came from the National Bureau of Economic Research, that there should be coordinated events in the high schools for students to be doing their FAFSA application and their CCC apply. And so we need to think about, are we going to be changing our recruitment and onboarding processes now that we have guided pathways? And we'll come back to that thought in just a moment. So this was where I found a lot of the very interesting statistics about what the literature calls summer melt. So of 100 students who apply to community colleges nationally, 56 are lost during onboarding. And remember those statistics I shared with you earlier from CalPAS Plus. You can jump on board and check that for your own college, but we are losing between 50 to 70% of our students that say that they have intentions of coming into the community colleges that never show up in any classes. And some of the reasons for this are that there really is no bridge that couples K-12 and higher education. And there's not really an incentive for the high schools or the colleges to provide summer support. And so this is what they call summer melt. So we see that we're losing over 50% of our students. But what also is happening is that 30% of students that say that they're going to a four-year university from K-12 also fail to attend. So it's not just us. It shows a need for higher education generally to be connecting much better with K-12 though, and helping guide the students over that critical summer period. And what the literature mentioned here is that to be able to navigate into college can require a level of financial and college literacy that has nothing to do with how well students would actually do if they were able to be helped through that process and into classes. And so, you know, the fact that the high school counts the students as college bound, but then doesn't help them beyond that, and the colleges don't count non-matriculated students in their retention statistics, all just kind of comes together and disadvantages the students. And so we know that, again, it's our lower SES students that are falling out of that pipeline. So let's jump into our third and final reflection discussion now in your breakout rooms. I want you to think about this problem about summer melt, and we know it disproportionately impacts our lower income students. And so what can we be doing as colleges to try to help meet up with our K-12 in the middle and try to help these students bridge this gap and not lose over 50% of our students. So we're going to put you back in your breakout rooms again for another 8 minutes, and we will hear all of your good ideas in a moment. Thank you. Okay, so room one, in room one, we have Bruce, Carly, and Jeanette. Would somebody like to report out on your discussion?
I'm going to volunteer to report. My name's Jeanette, and I work at Santa Ana College.
Thanks.
Yeah, and so what I was mentioning, I think, to help maybe with summer burnout is some things that people have mentioned already before is pre-COVID have, you know, days like automotive days, manufacturing, welding, digital media, stuff like that. I know our culinary program is working on something to, like I heard somebody mention with the different cameras so they can still see like what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure that other areas will piggyback on that. But I was saying even, again, because we're just COVID times, just Zoom sessions, the earlier on students are exposed and even the parents to their options that they can be motivated to pursue other avenues such as certificates. They don't have to do the same old mundane English and math stuff. They can do, you know, an automotive certificate, a medical assistant certificate, accounting, just that exposure to what they can do. And oftentimes we have articulated, one course with their high school. So then they come on campus, for example, a medical assistant, they only have 4 more classes to do. They can get that medical assistant certificate. They don't have to be working at McDonald's, flipping burgers and whatnot. And if they decide to go on to pursue their degree or transfer, those options are available to them. But many students are not even aware how that whole process works. But again, the earlier we introduce that to them, as well as their parents, I think the better they'll be and help them stay motivated to finish high school or to take a class, finish a certificate. I think that will help with the burnout possibly.
Yeah, I agree. That idea of being able to earn something other than minimum wage very quickly just by taking 1 or 2 classes at the college, in one semester, I think is very attractive to students and something that we don't market enough. I completely agree with you, Jeanette. Okay, thank you. So
Sure.
room 2, I think, oh, sorry, did you have something else to add?
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so room 2, I think we had Annette and is it Jean or Jean?
Jean.
Okay, great. Do you want to report out?
I'll go ahead and report out. So we talked about, during the summer melt, some of the things that we have done in the past at our college, because our population of actual employees goes down because we have many 10-month employees, but we've done summer camps to high, low risk, high reward, just to get students onto campus and then maybe give them a flavor of something. But we did talk about many of the summer melt solutions we came up with are financially may not be available because the high schools and the community colleges don't have the funds. But we totally agreed that we love the cross-pollination of community college counselors and high school counselors, and that more of that would be an excellent way to work. And the last thing is we do a code jam and a math jam where there's some different coping, different types of enrichment that we sprinkle in there, which is great, but it's the week before school starts. So we need to think about doing something earlier on, earlier on in the summer to help stretch that so that summer melt doesn't happen.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, and then our final room, we had, I think, Andrew, Becky, Christina, and Leslie. I think somebody other than Christina maybe needs to report out. She's done the lion's share so far.
Yeah, Dr. Karen, I'm going to go for our group. Some of the things that we mentioned is some things that we were doing at my college where we would do career treks, where we would take different types of majors of students based on some of the connections we have and being in Silicon Valley. So we've taken our hospitality students to Levi Stadium so they can get indoctrinated into their service industry. We took in engineering students to V5 Systems, which is a high-end security company. And then also we took in our engineering students to Applied Materials to look around their factory, as well as we took our faculty. But in the COVID environment, we're still doing virtual events, but more or less less career treks, but we're trying to get that back to Facebook Live events.
Great. Yeah, and I think everybody's going to be more than ready for that when we get to that point. Thank you for sharing. Okay,
yes.
So let's look at a few other things that are in the toolkit on this topic. So there's information on nudges, which we're going to look at, and summer transition and orientations by pathway and summer bridge. All of those things we're going to kind of touch on in the next few slides. So what do we mean by nudges? Nudges mean those texts that go out from the college to students, reminding them that they need to do certain things. And so there've been a couple of studies on this. It's a very low cost, scalable strategy. And one study showed that they were seeing, look at these figures here, 11% increase in matriculation, 20% in persistence, 20% decline in student loan borrowing, and 60% reduction in administrative burden, which is great. So locally, one of our community colleges had bought an a program called Enrollment RX in order to, which is kind of like a constant contact system for just enrollment management. And it sends reminders to students basically if they forget that they need to do a step on their onboarding process. And then in terms of summer transition support, the research really pointed out that students are separated from their previous microsystems in the high school and not yet connected with the college microsystems for support. And so they really were talking about the fact that between our systems, we do have a shared responsibility to make sure that fall enrollment happens. And so they were talking about different strategies such as high school staying late and colleges starting early, you know, with summer bridge and things like that, and really talking about high touch relationships and support that straddle both systems. And again, Santa Barbara City College during this time of you know, COVID was using live chats with students. This was actually before COVID, but now I know most colleges have kind of gone to that model so that students can chat with somebody anytime they're online 24/7. But really the overview of this is that the collaboration that we have between our feeder schools and our colleges needs to increase and improve, and that, you know, we may have some pockets, but we need something more systemic. And we need strong leadership to build these systems instead of these things happening in isolation. So I mentioned before the importance of orientations, and you know, one of the deans at one of our colleges was saying we really need to look at a different approach and stagger the matriculation steps. And it shouldn't be that when they come to campus, this information is brand new to them. They should already be, you know, partway through the process by the time that we actually get them on the campus. And it talks about some colleges have started doing non-cognitive assessments of academic engagement and self-efficacy with students. So those kinds of questions as they're enrolling that help figure out which students are most likely or at risk to drop out, and figuring out, you know, what is their level of engagement they want on campus, what's their commitment to education, what level of resiliency do they have, and how comfortable do they feel on the campus. And then they can do a crosswalk to match that student score with the different resources available at each campus, which I think is really interesting. You know, the challenge that we have really is meeting students where they are and delivering just the right amount of services to the right students at the right time. And so, you know, they all need something a little bit different. They're all at different points. And so using technology to help us do some of that assessment is a way that you can really work better with your students and help them to persist. I mentioned again, Ventura College had already started doing thematic counseling around meta majors, and they were really happy with that. And you were talking a little bit about Summer Bridge, and again, the research was really showing that Summer Bridge programs are very effective. And Bakersfield College has one where they were showing the following outcomes, that their bridge students were having outcomes that double or more than double in units attempted and passed, transfer level English and math attempted and passed, and college level English and math attempted and passed. And so they started it as a small pilot program, but the outcomes they saw were so successful, they've been scaling the program over the last 5 years. So we just kind of talked about this, that different students need different levels of student support. And so some colleges are beginning to pilot questions that can be added to the portal to try and figure out which students need most help. And this was interesting. The Guided Pathways faculty lead at Moorpark said the risk of guided pathways is that we continue helping those who don't need help. So this ability to differentiate services for students with different levels of need, I think, is also very important, because we only have a certain limited capacity in our colleges. I thought this was an interesting quote from Completion by Design. They were talking about how technologies can automate academic maps and things like that, but they don't really solve failure rate issues. And so Some colleges already have a first year experience program. And one of the colleges in our region was looking at adding a second year experience program, which other colleges were also quite interested in. And I think this is the reason why this statistic. Low income first generation students are 4 times more likely to drop out after their first year as their peers without either risk factor. And I think Gary had added something in the chat earlier about this having been his struggle as a first generation student as to how to navigate our complex systems. So this kind of talks about some next steps that are built into the toolkit. You'll see there's a readiness self-assessment that you can complete with your teams. And I would advise that you would complete it with your teams of people that do work with K-12, wherever that team is coming from at the college. There are many different departments that work with K-12, but just doing something together to look at your readiness is going to be helpful for your work moving forward. As I mentioned, there's also a K-12 version of the toolkit, which you can share with your partner high schools and districts if that would be helpful. And then there's also an action planning template in the toolkit to help you move forward if you've decided after this presentation that working more closely with your K-12 partners is something that you would like to do. So when I presented this toolkit to the colleges in my region, this was some of the feedback that we got from them about talking to K-12, doing the readiness self-assessment, looking at their strategic plan for outreach and marketing, linking early college credit options with guided pathways, and just really taking this systemic view of what's going on between K-12 and the colleges. Some further feedback here on different topics that we need workshops for families and parents. We need to be doing that career class in high school for undecided seniors. It would be great to be using those non-cognitive assessments. We need the college counselors to be seeing the high school students as theirs. Do they work with their dual enrollment students, their high school articulated students or not? And then our guided pathways technical assistance providers for our region gave their input as well. And they were basically talking, and I love this quote, the second one here, input, not feedback from K-12 is needed to develop guided pathways. And so I think it's critical that the K-12 team should be part of your guided pathways teams at your colleges. And if that's not the case at the moment, that's definitely something that I would recommend. And then asking students what they need. We always need that student voice. Don't just design things for them. Talk to the students about where are they stuck. Otherwise, you're going to be designing things that they're not necessarily going to be using. And they also said that they felt it was critical that outreach teams who already do the work of reaching out to our K-12 partners need to be part of guided pathways, and getting them to kind of to take that on board. So here's the link if you would like to be downloading the toolkit. I'm just going to copy this and drop it into the chat now. It would be great if on your way out of this session, you would like to type into the chat one thing you would like to do differently with your incoming high school students after having heard this presentation. Oh, and the toolkit is also available in the Vision for Success website if you have access to that, but I'll just drop this link in. This is where it's posted on our South Central Coast Regional Consortium webpage.
Karen,
So I'll just drop that in the chat now.
It is just dropped into the chat now.
Oh, you did that. Thanks so much, Amanda. Okay. Okay, so thank you everybody for participating. If you would like to, just drop in the chat one thing you think you might want to do differently now, that would be great. So I've got some idea of, how this might have helped with your thinking moving forward. So yeah, I like that as well. And that getting input rather than asking for feedback. It's proactive rather than reactive. Exactly. And as students are dealing with a system that we've already designed that we're trying to kind of force them through. So I think, you know, giving them an opportunity to design services that work better for them is something we can be doing. Leslie said, like to connect with the guided pathway leads in my region. Talk to the, is that concurrent enrollment deans or CTE?
Oh, sorry, career education.
Career education deans and the K-12s. Yeah, the pathway coordinators, definitely. Great. Any other ideas from anyone? Okay, well, thank you all so much for spending time with us today. Hopefully this was helpful. Please, you know, use the toolkit and share it widely. It was developed by the South Central Coast region, but it's for everybody. That's why it's in the Vision for Success website as well. All right, thank you all for your time and have a great rest of your afternoon.